Hello, everyone. I'm Lisa Johnson, CEO of BioForward. And from myself, from the BioForward team, the board of directors, welcome to the 2022 Wisconsin BioHealth Summit. It's weird to be back in the Capitol Theater again. You know, we did this 16, 17, maybe 18, but I think it was just a couple years. It's much more intimate. It's classic, but you're much closer than in the Overture Center. But it's just great to have all of you here. Thank you. Let me move. Oh, it's already there. BioForward is focused on two main goals. We are promoting the industry and the region, and we are positioning our industry for success. For 3 years, we have been investing in a national talent campaign. And those last videos that you saw are segments from longer videos we are using in our campaign. Our sessions today align with our goals and our promotional tactics. We start the day with an investment capital session with Ethan Lieberman, an area we've not focused on much before with our summits. But as an organization, you will see BioForward focusing more on our emerging growth companies and marketing them nationwide. At 1:30, we have experts from Sativa, LabCorp, Catalent, and Pfizer presenting and discussing the drug development journey. Inclusion, equity, diversity. This is a critical focus for all of us. We know our companies are stronger and perform at much higher levels when we have inclusive and diverse cultures. I am really excited to have these two incredible women present on their company's efforts and different perspectives. Yet, although much different in company size, they are tackling the same challenges and achieving many of their goals. At lunch, we honor two of our impressive innovators in James Cook from University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee and Nancy Kendrick of Kendrick Labs. At 1:30, we hear from 5 exciting emerging growth companies, a session so many of you enjoy each year. And during the 11 o'clock session time, we are holding our second annual research communications competition with grad students from MCW, UW-Milwaukee, and UW-Madison. If we do not have researchers who can communicate their work and explain its importance to the public, the non-experts will fill the void. At 11 o'clock, besides our communication competition, we have 2 other sessions and the launching of our 2022 Wisconsin BioHealth Economic Impact Report, a great presentation and discussion around theranostics. And as our impact report has highlighted, Wisconsin has a major strength in medical devices and radiation medicine. The next 11 o'clock panel examines the report in more detail and provides the audience with success stories, insights into our industry, challenges, and how to use the report presentation by our PR firm, Chartwell Agency. So a little teaser before that panel even comes on. It is substantial, and it is growing, the impact that the biohealth industry has on the state of Wisconsin. We have posters with some QR codes so you can download the report. It's also on our website now, and we'll have some reports on the lunch tables as well. I also wanted to put up the SBIR Awards, another section in the report. Advocacy is a major focus for BioForward at local, state, and federal level. SBIR funding levels are shown from our impact report. I did want to give some exciting news. This critical program that has supported so many companies in the life science industry, this was not it was up for non-reauthorization as of September 30th, but because of bipartisan support in the House, the Senate, President Biden did sign the reauthorization at the end of September, which is absolutely huge for so many of our emerging growth companies. And I know firsthand because my company's dependent on those grants under both of the companies that I worked at. I also wanted to highlight that our state, through WDC and the Center for Technology Communications, further support our entrepreneurs with an SBIR matching grant program called SBIR Advance. So, Thank you to all of our sponsors. They're all over there. But up on top, we wanted to give special recognition to Fisher Scientific, our platinum sponsor, WDC, who has been a launch sponsor for many years, and Hausman, I think since I've been with BioForward since 2015, has always been our reception sponsor. So thank you. And to our event sponsors, thank you so much for helping us put on this summit. We truly appreciate it. And to our networking sponsors, our student registration sponsors, I think we have close to 150 students that have registered for the summit, and our swag sponsor. Okay, I gotta get away from the podium for this because I like to move on this one. So I went to Ireland in August, and if you've been to Ireland or Scotland, when you drive on their roads, they're like this wide, right? So you're passing as cars, and if you go like a few inches, you'll hit the mirror of the other car, right? And then on the other side are stone walls, and on the other side are like ditches. So I'm riding my bike out in the countryside, and I'm with the horses and the sheep, and I'm not on a 2-lane road, I'm on a 1-lane road. So as I'm riding my bike, here comes this utility truck coming at me. And I'm like, there's no dang way that he's gonna be able to get around me. I gotta get off on the shoulder. So I get my bike over, I put my left foot down on the road, I put my right foot down. There are no shoulders in Ireland. There are no shoulders. So what happens to Lisa? Boom, she topples down into the ditch. So this isn't like a little ditch. You know what, with snow plowing in the Midwest, especially Iowa, like it's those deep ditches so they can throw the snow down? That's what they have in Ireland. But rather than snow, think about big raspberry bushes. They're called briar patches over there. But it's like humongous raspberry bushes, and the thorns are almost like a rose bush thorn, right? So I have shorts on, short sleeve shirt, and I am embedded into the briar patch on my right side. Fortunately, the utility truck driver stops. He gets out of the truck, he looks down into the ditch, and he goes, "Ma'am, are you okay?" And I said, "Well, actually, I'm stuck." So now envision, I got a bike in between my legs too, right? It's right there, and I'm like this, looking up at him. And he said, "Give me your hand." So he reaches down with my right, I reach up with my left, grab his hand. Sorry, folks, this body with a bike in between my legs is not coming up with one hand, right? Because I'm down many feet. So he goes, "Give me your other hand." I said, so I'm like pulling it out of this briar patch, and I'm completely blood. I am ripped apart on my hand, my legs, my arm. So I look and I said, "My hand's all bloody." He said, "Give me your hand." So I give him my other hand, and with 2 hands, we get this big body out. It's like a crane pulling me out. So we get up, I get up there, we get on the road, because again, there's no shoulder. I get on the road, and he looks at me and he goes, "Ma'am, are you sure you're all right?" Because he's probably like, "This is a crazy lady here." And I hit him on the shoulder, and I said, I'm really embarrassed. But I got to ask you, when you were driving down, you saw me topple into that ditch. Did you just laugh hysterically? And he goes, "Well, yes, ma'am, I did." So I was in a county called Roscommon. I'll guarantee you that was in every pub that night, right? Like, that stupid American woman thinks we have a shoulder. And furthermore, what was she thinking? I mean, I had all the room in the world to get by a bicycle. I could have gone by a car, right? So I'm like, but moral of the story, just stop. Just stop sometimes. Maybe lend a hand to someone. I run through life, right? You can see I can barely stop moving, right? Sometimes just slow down. Get out of your office. Get out of your house. My God, we become so isolated. Get out and just help people. So we really wanted to honor people at our last annual meeting here in 2022. in April. We just didn't quite have our act together on our nomination process, so we'll be watching the next 4 to 6 weeks. We really want to recognize individuals and companies that are working to uplift our communities. Again, we talk about growing this industry, making Wisconsin stronger. If we don't have strong communities and we're not willing to put effort into making our communities stronger, there's no way our industry is going to make it here either. So that's my message to you. It's a message to myself I have to keep telling myself. But let's do that together to make this world a better place. Probably got a little dizzy doing that, right? So I love that. I love that. You know, we're lifting each other up. Okay, well, and then that's right into, let's go into social media. So please post, tag us, and we have a social media wall that you may see you're posting on. So please do post social media about this great event. And with that, I am now going to introduce Tom Foti with Aldebaran, who will be introducing our keynote speaker, Ethan Lieberman. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. It's always inspiring to hear Lisa's story. She always comes up with something new, and so I'm trying to get this image of Lisa out of the briar patch, out of my brain here, so I can focus. But anyways, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Lisa, for this opportunity to introduce Ethan as our keynote speaker today. My name is Tom Foti, and I'm the general manager and vice president at Aldebaran, based here in Madison, and I'm very grateful to say that I've been with the company for 13 years. I'm humbled and excited to introduce Ethan at TA as our keynote speaker today. After 19 years of building a profitable business, the private equity company TA from Boston was the first institutional investor, and Ethan led the investment at Aldebaran. TA's investment in Aldebaran greatly accelerated the trajectory of the company. They helped us develop our management team, they helped us build our GMP manufacturing facility, and they helped us implement more rigorous processes so that we could operate more efficiently. Without their timely investment, the eventual investment by EQT, which is another private equity company, in 2019, which is a company from Sweden, and eventually in 2021 to Danaher, never would have been possible. Today, Aldebaran is a key contributor to Danaher's future, and we're heavily focused on the genomic medicine strategy. If you look at the slide, these companies are all Danaher operating companies. For several years, we've been thinking about delivering the genetic code to enable advanced cell therapies to eventually, with our hope, to cure people. In step one up on the slide, you see the teams from IDT, Aldebaran, and Precision Nanosystems optimizing code generation and code delivery. It starts with DNA, but we also have essential technologies around messenger RNA, and of course the rapidly expanding area of gene editing with CRISPR-Cas9. All of these products and services are required and are foundational to manufacturing cell and gene therapies of tomorrow. In step two, we are also heavily focused on analytical technologies and innovations to QC test and release materials so that they can be used in these advanced therapies at pharmaceutical, biotech companies and contract manufacturing organizations. And in some cases, we're thinking about distributed models where we manufacture right at the hospital. In step three, Cytiva and Paul, we bring it all together with their leadership position in offering equipment to manufacture advanced cell and gene therapies and vaccines to pharma and biotech. Together, these brands account for $14 billion of revenue for Danaher, and so we are very excited about the future and our strategic focus on genomic medicine. I'll be around the rest of the day if you guys have any specific questions about Aldebaran and Danaher, but now I'd like to welcome Ethan to the stage. Let's give him a warm Wisconsin welcome.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here. Tom, thank you for that kind introduction. My name is Ethan Lieberman. I'm a managing director at TA Associates, and we were very fortunate, as Tom said, to be the first institutional investor in Aldevron, which is a very, very special company. I want to start with a couple of thank yous. Lisa, first of all, thank you so much for your leadership of this conference. I haven't met anyone yet in Madison who doesn't rave about Lisa, so I'm still looking for that person, but she's probably going to run for mayor, as far as I can tell, as her next gig. To Tom Foti, thank you for pitching this opportunity to me. Tom is an integral part of the Aldevron story and has been the leader of the Madison operation for some time. Tom is also a major sandbagger, for the record, both in business and in pitching this opportunity. So first of all, in business, he made the mistake of showing me the original business plan for the Madison division of Aldevron last night when I was in his office. And let's just say that he was off by several factors to the downside in terms of what the opportunity might be when he first pitched it to Aldevron's founder. And then for today, I think he told me, there might be a couple people in the audience, and then I get to this theater, and here we are. So anyway, well done, Tom. And then to the members of the Aldevron family, and it is a family, thank you to everyone. And Tom, please transmit this message back to Madison and Fargo for making the company so special. I've been fortunate to make a lot of investments. TA, as you'll see in the presentation, has made over 550 investments over time. And Aldevron is singularly the most special investment our firm has ever been involved with, both in terms of the good it does for the world as well as its performance. And both really matter to us. So I'll get into a little bit of that today, but it's due to the people that make Aldevron work every day that we're able to enjoy such success as a partner. I'll be talking about two things today. First will be a little bit of background on TA. My understanding of those of you in the audience is some may be familiar with private equity, with venture capital, with buyouts. I'll try to place TA in the context of the investment continuum. And I'll give you a sense of what we bring to the table in terms of partnership well beyond the funds that we raise from institutions. The second part, and much more fun from my perspective, will be the Aldevron story. How did we get involved? What is Aldevron's mission? What's the journey been from Michael Chambers' lab at NDSU to the sale last year to Danaher, which was well publicized and for good reason. And then at the end, I'll leave some time for questions. I would very much welcome questions about any of the topics I'll cover today. So with that, let's get going. So first, an overview of TA. TA is a global private equity firm. We have 5 offices around the world, and we've grown significantly over the past several years. We now have over 200 employees. We have 130 investment professionals, and 49 of us are what we call deal sponsors. And that's those of us at a post-MBA level that actually originate, lead, and govern our portfolio companies. We also have 23 members of our strategic resource group, and I'll get into a little bit of this. This is what we take pride in, as Tom alluded to, in helping companies beyond the capital we provide. I'm one of 24 managing directors at TA, and we have an average of 18 years of tenure at the firm, and that's super important. Our retention of talent and our cultivation of talent is something we take a lot of pride in. And in fact, I have proudly owned every title we offer at TA. So I started at the firm in 2007 as an associate. And many of our partners today, I believe 18 or so of the 24, were former associates and have moved up the ranks within TA. We're also proud of our investment track record. At the end of the day, that's obviously only part of our story. But as you see in the top left of the slide, we've been able to generate really attractive returns for our investors, and that is the ultimate sustainable measuring stick in private equity, and it's what allows us to raise fund after fund and to continue to hire and grow and support companies like Aldevron. We live by our core values, and there are 10 of them. I'll highlight a couple. One is that, much like Aldevron, people are our most important asset. In a world of COVID where we were all remote, it was incredibly challenging, especially to mentor our younger professionals. And I'm sure all of you experience that in your day-to-day lives. And the relief and the satisfaction of bringing folks back into the office, which we've done in large part over the last several months, has been great. And developing people at the end of the day, beyond the capital we raise, beyond the offices that we are fortunate to sit in, is the most important growth avenue we can take as an organization. The other is to do the right thing. We believe that our companies can do well by doing good. And Aldevron is such a classic example, as we'll get into, in terms of the enablement of curative medicines in gene and cell therapy. And we feel wonderful about supporting that kind of a business. And the final one is entrepreneurial hustle and decisiveness. It's an incredibly important element of TA that we attribute success to those who act upon an impulse and make investments happen. And one of the great prides I have about the TA investment in Aldevron is that I first met Michael Chambers in 2013 when he came into our offices, very reluctantly, by the way, to meet with me before we actually spent 4 years getting to know each other and finally invested in 2017. And when the investment is celebrated around TA, those early moments of spending time together and cultivating a relationship well before Aldevron was ever considered an opportunity or an investment that may close was critical. So there are, as you guys may have read, many, many private equity firms out there. This is an industry that's grown exceptionally quickly over the last couple of decades. And as any business does, we try to differentiate ourselves versus the competition. And I may have mentioned, we've been around a long time. We've actually were founded in 1968. And these are the things that I think we still hold true today and that make us differentiated versus our competition. So we go to market with an ownership agnostic approach. And we actually live this specifically in the Aldevron investment, in that we said to Michael, the founder, who you'll hear from in a little bit, Michael, once we determine a valuation for Aldevron, we're actually indifferent whether we own 70% of the company, 50% of the company, or 30% of the company. And we really meant that. That's an incredibly unique approach in private equity, where many of our competitors are used to owning control and used to owning, frankly, 90% plus of the shares outstanding. We view ourselves as an invited guest in the boardroom. This is quite different as well. So if you look at how some other firms describe themselves on their websites, let's say, you might see something like, we have 20,000 employees. We own and control 35 businesses. We take a very different approach. We have partnered with 120 companies in our portfolio. Those companies that we support employ X number of thousands of employees. And we feel strongly that because we take a partnership approach, we behave the same way whether we're in control or not. And I have an anecdote during the Aldevron section that'll hopefully prove that out. We don't charge management or transaction fees. Very unique within private equity. There's a practice of basically saying, for the privilege of working with said firm, we'll charge fees to recoup some of the cost of basically board service. We've never thought that was aligned with our investment philosophy and with the value creation within our portfolio. We've decided to never do that. That is completely unique within any large private equity firm, as far as I know. We're a global firm. We have offices around the world. We now have, this is actually dated because we very recently opened an office in Austin, Texas, but we have Boston, Menlo Park, London, Mumbai, Hong Kong, and we have a healthcare practice out of all those offices. And then we have a captive debt fund that we invest alongside our equity. I would say that along the lines of the invited guest point, I know Tom likes sports analogies as a former basketball player. I view myself in the context of an Aldevron investment as an assistant coach at best, right? I hold the clipboard on the sideline. When we call a timeout, I might ask some questions of some of our players. But one thing I'm never confused about is who's actually playing the game on the field. Those are the employees of Aldevron. That's Tom Foti, that's Michael Chambers, that's the employee, Ben, that you heard from in the opening. Those are the people that are making the investment happen and are making the company successful. We might have insights, we might have experiences that we bring to bear from other investments, but ultimately, I'm an assistant coach, and I'm embracing that role. A little bit more on what makes us different. I won't delve into every one of these boxes, but We do focus on profitable growing businesses. So unlike a venture capital firm that might fund companies burning cash who actually need money in order to survive, we find companies like Aldebaran that are already profitable, don't need capital. And one of my partners likes to say, we actually have a hard job. We're selling money to people that don't need it. And so that's a challenging task, and it means that along with the money, right, which is a commodity at this point, we need to bring more value-added capabilities alongside that capital in order to actually matter to the portfolio companies that we back. A couple of these have come up on a prior slide, but I'd point to sourcing and financing acquisitions as a core competency of TA. Aldebaran had this amazing ability to grow organically, and we actually decided collectively as a board that any time spent on acquisitions would actually be a distraction from organic growth. But many other companies are very acquisitive, and in fact, we've helped originate, execute, finance, and integrate over 500 acquisitions within our portfolio, and actually over 220 last year alone. So many of our portfolio companies are serial acquirers. We also have a TA Strategic Resource Group, or SRG. I'll get into that a little bit more later in the presentation, but this is an internal team. I mentioned there are 23 members of it who are former operators of businesses, former consultants. They deploy on a bespoke basis into our portfolio to solve specific business problems. So if, for example, Tom comes to me and says, I need help organizing a small sales force to go to market with our protein product, and I have no idea how many reps I need, how to compensate them, and what the benchmark organizations across our industry look like, we bring to bear a group of people that can actually produce that data and information to help Tom make a better decision. And we take a lot of pride in that. And again, we don't charge management fees, we don't charge transaction fees. So we bear the cost of that SRG on our P&L at TA, and our portfolio companies really appreciate that. So we have a well-diversified portfolio of over 100 companies. And the beauty of having that many portfolio companies in a fund our size is that no one company will determine the outcome of a fund. And management teams love to hear that because there ends up being no pressure to exit a single investment in order to show a win or to raise the next fund, right? When you have 100 companies, there's a natural cadence in and out of the portfolio that delivers the returns as opposed to concentration in any one. For a firm our size, and we're investing today out of TA14, which is a $12.5 billion fund, many firms of that size might have 15, 20 investments in a fund. We have 60. So we are deliberately over-diversified. This schematic is intended to show where we sit on a spectrum of EBITDA growth and enterprise and equity values across the continuum of private equity. And the intention is to say that because we invest in middle market growth companies at lower enterprise values and lower equity values, we try to prioritize growth as a key driver of our return. If you look at the other end of the spectrum, lower EBITDA growth and maybe billions of dollars of value at entry, sorry about that. We compete with firms that are primarily driven by GDP growth, right? They tend to buy companies that are slow growers, maybe not innovative, certainly cash flow quite well, but are nowhere near the profile of like an Aldebaran, whereby growth will come by multiples. In fact, Aldebaran's revenue and earnings grew 8-fold in the 4 years we were investors. LBO firms, many of which are publicly traded now, position themselves differently. They target lower returns, they look to put more capital to work, and they sit in a very different part of the investment ecosystem that we do. What's not on this page is venture capital, which would be to the left of the y-axis, if you will, in that they invest in very small companies who are burning cash, like I said, and need capital in order to achieve milestones and hopefully turn profitable one day. So a little bit more detail about what do we look for. A lot of questions I had one at dinner last night is, what do you look for in an investment? And it's easier to say what we look for and what we don't. What we look for are profitable businesses that are growing quickly. They have strong underlying organic growth. Usually that's both driven by the market itself and by taking of market share from lesser competitors. We're agnostic to ownership, as I mentioned. And we want to have the opportunity to engage with management in order to add value. That's super important as a value creation lever in our investment thesis. And we have a very judicious use of leverage. And this is an important differentiator for TA as well. There are firms, maybe on the right of that last page, that never see a dollar of debt they don't like. And every dollar of debt that they put into investment is actually a dollar of equity that they don't have to fund. And that gears their returns and makes their IRRs a little bit higher. We have a philosophy of capital structure should never dictate strategy. And the underlying growth of our portfolio is by far and away more so than financial engineering of paying down debt, and more so than multiple arbitrage, paying a low multiple and selling at a high multiple. More than both of those factors, the third, growth, is the underlying, by far, driver of our returns when we've decomposed them over many cycles and many generations. We try to avoid turnarounds. One of my partners likes to say we don't do turnarounds intentionally. We generally don't like capital-intensive businesses, and Aldevron's a huge outlier from that belief, and I'll get into that in the Aldevron section. And we try to avoid cyclical industries. We've had bad experience with, for example, derivatives of oil pricing, or highly cyclical industries that tend to, be volatile in line with the macroeconomy. Businesses that we back tend to be successful independent of presidential administration, healthcare regulatory regime, et cetera. So this is one way to measure our growth, right? Not only the people that we employ, but also the funds under management. And as you'll see, we've been deploying capital quite rapidly, as evidenced by the fact that our funds have been 3 years and 1 year apart successively over the last couple of funds. That is a testament to the pace at which we've been able to find investments and make investments, even through COVID, which was, I think, surprising to all of us. Most of our funds are global dollar-denominated equity funds. That's what you see here in TA13, TA14, et cetera. We also have smaller funds at the top of each bar that are representing our sub-debt funds, again, the funds that invest alongside our equity, as well as a newer generation of funds called Select Opportunities, which is actually an ability to stay invested in our winning companies longer, as opposed to having to exit them and move on to the next investment. I love this slide. It's probably the one that I'm most passionate about. This is basically our sales funnel. And when we hire associates, and I, of course, was one of those associates in 2007, when they come out of investment banking or they come out of consulting, I feel like sales is this allergic reaction, 4-letter word that they don't want to hear. They want to sit in an ivory tower and make investments and evaluate companies. And the reality is that no investments happen without originating them in the first place, at least not at TA. We don't participate in auctions. We generally don't buy companies that are for sale. We tend to invest any amount we can in as much of a company as we can that we believe has opportunity for greatness. And when something's in an auction and being brokered publicly, we tend not to participate. But these numbers are sort of staggering. So as a firm, this is for the full year of 2021, we emailed 19,000 companies. We actually called, meaning live connection. This is important because I sit on the associate review committee, so I know exactly what these terms mean. We called 8,000. All of which to yield 35 investments, right? So the funnel is very tight in terms of all of the activity at the top yielding very few closed investments at the bottom. And in total, we invested $7.4 billion roughly of equity through the 2021 year. I would say that's actually a higher yield rate than we're typically having. We used to make 15, 16 investments prior to the last couple of years, and I think this year we'll return to that norm. So. And yet we still have all the same activity at the top of the funnel. The staffing, the meritocracy, and the compensation that powers this level of activity is something that I think is truly unique to TA. And our limited partners, who are university endowments, pension funds, family offices, et cetera, they love this slide because it's really what embodies our hustle as an organization. And frankly, it was one of the reasons that we found our way to Aldevron. In terms of value add, what do we mean? Value add is a way overused term in private equity, in my opinion. And the reality is it means thousands of things. If I describe to you how our strategic resource group engaged in a single company, all you would know is how it engaged with a single company. But this is an attempt to show you a menu of the types of ways in which we do engage. And it spans everything from revenue growth to sourcing acquisitions, to recruiting human capital and talent. As Tom mentioned, we helped build out the management team at TA, to recruiting board members, to using data science to solve business problems. I think at the end of the day, one lesson I learned in interacting with tons of growth companies is that it's lonely in your silo within your market. It's very easy to be a subject matter expert in science, let's say, and to innovate in a specific lane. But it's very hard to know generalizable business lessons from other industries, from other competitors in your space, from competitors in adjacent spaces. And what we bring to bear through our strategic resource group is this menu of ways in which you can tap us and say, we need help, right? We have in diligence a process that discovers hundreds of business issues, or what I call, lack of business hygiene, that we're able to help with. When I said we could help with business hygiene, a CEO recently told me, does that mean we smell bad? I said, no. It's that we think you can be better in several elements that make a business healthy and make it valuable in the eyes of strategic acquirers, public markets, et cetera. We've been at this a long time, and we've been fortunate to make a ton of investments across sectors. And this page and the next are an encapsulation of all the investments we've made in healthcare sorted by sector. There's a reason pharma and pharma-related services are first. Obviously, that's you all today. And we're proud that there's a ton of logos, many of which you may recognize on this page, dating all the way back to Invitrogen. We were actually the first institutional investor in Invitrogen in 1998 before it went public. But one element that helps build our healthcare practice and make it what it is that we have a perspective across, I'll show you the next page as well, all of these end markets, and believe healthcare is actually an ecosystem. So if you at Aldevron empower a curative therapeutic, healthcare doesn't end there, right? That therapeutic needs to be manufactured, it needs to be delivered, it needs to be priced and paid for, and it needs to be effective within a patient. And without understanding the full continuum of investments that we do by having placed bets in all of these sectors, I don't think we'd have the appreciation of what makes a given company in any of these silos successful. Okay, so that encapsulates the TA commercial. Apologies if that was detailed for all of you, but now we get into the fun part of the Aldevron case study. This is, again, one of the most special investments we've ever been involved with, and something that I'm just thrilled to be able to tell you all about. We'll start with a video where you can hear from the founder, Michael Chambers. One year in the life of Aldevron is like 10 years in the life of a typical growth company. The way we were wrong about Aldevron is the way we love being wrong, which is that the business wildly outperformed our expectations.
The focus of medicine was really treating symptoms and letting the body repair itself. Now we can actually go in and replace defective genes, or replace that set of genetic instructions that our cells rely on to communicate with each other and to really create a healthy body. And so that's a relatively new thing in medicine, and Aldevron's DNA is used to really empower those different applications.
TA is not set up to take binary bets on innovative molecules or innovative indications in the pharmaceutical industry, and instead we came across this business, which is a bit of an index bet across all indications.
The wonderful problem we have at Aldevron is that because the market is growing so quickly, and because we have such a dramatic first mover advantage, developing capacity in time to meet market demand, that has been a real challenge.
TA really helped us understand how to implement finance, how to build the company around better planning, how to put a board structure in place, how to navigate human resource issues. Sarepta is developing a new treatment for Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, which is a terrible disease that affects children and usually causes people to be in a wheelchair by the time they're a teenager. The results they're seeing are truly incredible in changing the lives of these patients. We certainly live in a different world right now in the era of the pandemic. Aldevron's technology is currently being used in almost 30 separate COVID-19 programs. For RNA vaccines, we're even making proteins and antibodies that are used in the quality control process for these vaccines.
There's so much more to do in this space, and as Michael Chambers often says, we're making Model T cars in the gene and cell therapy markets today.
I'm sitting in the world's largest GMP plasmid facility. It's a 75,000 square foot facility. We opened in 2018. What is perhaps more exciting is that behind me, Building 2 is being built. 190,000 square feet of space dedicated to manufacturing nucleic acids, enzymes, proteins, antibodies at a much larger scale to fuel gene therapy 2.0 and gene therapy 3.0. The future of the company is more promising than it's ever been.
So I find it hard not to be inspired by that video. The post-mortem on that, if you will, is that actually all those buildings that Michael was referring to and that showed up in the schematic are now built. This was made for TA's annual meeting a couple years ago. And to see what Aldevron was when Mark Carter in the video and I showed up in Fargo, North Dakota in 2015, and then a relocation of a 14-acre campus in the largest plasmid DNA manufacturing facility in the world is nothing short of remarkable. So I do mean it when I say that a year in the life of Aldevron is like 10 years of the life of most growth companies, not just any company, but growth companies. It's an incredible growth story. I stole this slide from Aldevron because I think the mission of the company is so important to manufacture biologics to the highest quality, meeting precise client requirements through smart investments and innovation. By delivering best-in-class service and superior value to those with whom we work, we are providing the products necessary to make meaningful changes worldwide. That's a pretty audacious mission, and I think empowering what I view as, one of the revolutions in medicine, through picks and shovels, in a way, servicing a gold rush is certainly, I think, an excellent way to embody that mission. So today, Aldevron has three very attractive product categories, and plasmid DNA from the start has been the core of the business and the majority of the revenues. But mRNA and proteins, and certainly proteins in Madison, Tom can tell you all about, are key growth areas and are exceptional performers within the product portfolio. Impressively, the company is able to manufacture these materials at 3 different quality grades, one of which may not be familiar to you all, and that's called GMP source. And what we found in diligence, and what Michael found long before TA ever showed up, was that there was an opportunity to sort of optimize for something higher quality than research grade, but not quite GMP with all the compliance bells and whistles associated with it, that would be taken up by the market before GMP was required. And actually GMP source across all of these product areas has been incredibly important in allowing clients to move quickly while they don't require GMP material. As you all know, the end markets for these products are massive and growing and exciting: gene therapy, cell therapy, gene editing, vaccines, and diagnostics. And as Mark Carter, my partner, put it in the video, we saw Aldevron as this index bet across a sector that we could largely not invest in. Sarepta, Juno, these companies that are biotech startups in many ways and don't have the financial profile that TA seeks are simply not addressable for us. But Aldevron was this amazing fertilizer, if you will, of all these projects. And I'll never forget that during diligence, one of Aldevron's prominent clients, I won't say who, had some negative phase 2 data that came out publicly. And I immediately called Michael and I said, Michael, what does this mean for us? And he said, well, Ethan, I think we're screwed. And I went, oh my God, say it ain't so, say it ain't so. And he started laughing. He said, Ethan, we have 400 clients, right? And some of them will be successful and some of them won't. And he actually correctly predicted that in the case I was calling about, that once the company was on the sidelines with their phase 2 data for a couple weeks, they'd be back, and sure enough, the drug eventually got approved. And it was a lesson to me in how diversified Aldevron really is across this growth sector, such that some products will get approved, some won't. That's the journey of FDA-based drug development. But if you're planting enough seeds and fertilizing enough seeds, if you follow the metaphor, you have a very successful company and, frankly, an index bet on a very high growth end market. You know, in some ways, Aldevron was an overnight success, 20-some years in the making, as I like to tease Michael about. And Michael founded this company with John Ballantyne, the chief scientific officer, in a lab in North Dakota State University. This is kind of like what you read about, right? And it was 1998, and at the time, he figured out a way to manufacture plasmid DNA innovatively, at least he thought. And this was, you know, start of the internet, right? Certainly, you know, emails getting off the ground. And so he posted on a Fargo message board that he was able to make DNA. And a week later, he had 80 requests for orders, and he was totally overwhelmed. And he said, I don't think I can possibly deliver all of this. And that's what got the company started. You know, gene and cell therapy took an incredible journey over the next couple of decades, including major setbacks because of perceived patient safety issues, et cetera. And Michael and John and Tom and team stayed the course and continued to be basically the gold standard of DNA plasmid manufacturing in the world. One of the coolest findings we had in diligence, which again was happening around the 2016 timeframe, was that we asked the question, how does this little company in Fargo compete with Thermo Fisher and Lonza and all these behemoths out there that must see the same opportunity in plasmid DNA that Aldevron does? And we spoke to someone at a very large pharmaceutical client, and they said, you know, it's funny, we bought DNA, the same exact order, from Aldevron and from Lonza and from Boehringer Ingelheim and from these massive companies, and we ran the product that was delivered through our quality control systems, and it turned out that Aldevron was superior on every dimension we could possibly measure, so we're only going to ever order from them. And that was, as an investor, one of the most amazing customer references we ever did, and it was totally anecdotal and accidental. But over time, Aldevron innovated in terms of opening up the protein division in Madison, which was based on that business plan from Tom Foti I acknowledged earlier, and has just gone on to do incredible things in terms of empowering vaccines, both COVID and otherwise. You know, we joked at our household that when we all got our COVID vaccines, we said, you know, I guess I get to say now I'm not only an investor, I'm also a client, you know, in a way, because the Aldevron plasmids ended up in our arms. But that was a really powerful doing well by doing good moment where we were a fertilizer across, as Michael referenced, 30 different COVID vaccine programs in development. And we were delivering at breakneck pace for all of those. We made our investment in 2017. We bought a slight majority of the company, and then the company was really off to the races. And I'd like to say that we were at least supportive from that, you know, bench side assistant coach vantage point of making investments in massive capacity expansion, in even better and faster service of clients, and in building out the management team. And one of the critical junctures of Aldevron's history was, as you see in 2020, Kevin Ballinger was hired as CEO, and Michael took the position of executive chairman. And for any of you who've worked with founders, that type of transition is wrought with mega emotion, right? Think about it. Michael's run this company for 20-some years. Along comes TA, along comes EQT, and all of a sudden they say, hey, this other guy that had never heard of Aldevron until a headhunter called him is going to come in and do the CEO job. And the beauty of how Kevin approached the job and how Michael approached Kevin's arrival was that they fit hand in glove. Kevin had a deep appreciation for Michael and the original founding team of Aldevron, because if you ask anyone in cell and gene therapy, they know exactly who Michael is, and he's critical. We joked last night, he was the original sales rep of Aldevron, which still has very, very few sales reps at all. The reputation is what sells the product. But Kevin joined as CEO, and we hired him away from Boston Scientific in Minneapolis, where he was basically one of two executives that was going to succeed the CEO for the next CEO position of Boston. So it was an incredible coup to get Kevin involved at Aldevron, and he deserves a ton of credit for bringing rigor and structure and systems and processes to a business that had frankly outgrown Michael's wildest expectations. And Kevin and Michael maintain their partnership today. Kevin remains president of the Aldevron business within Danaher and is just an exceptionally talented individual. We made the decision as investors in 2019 to take on EQT as another investor, and that was an incredibly complex decision. But I referenced earlier the way in which we behave as partners, and something I take a lot of pride in is at the finish line of the EQT investment, where we had EQT interested and we had several strategic buyers interested in buying the whole company, Michael had an emotional moment where he called us and he said, "Hey, Ethan, Mark, I'm not sure I want to do this. You know, this has all happened very quickly, and I'm feeling rushed." And we said, "Michael, you don't have to do anything. You know, we can shut this all down and continue to run the company just as we have been." And I think hearing from us, even though, of course, from a legal perspective, I guess we could have forced any sort of transaction, was really important to cementing that trust and relationship that Michael had in us, that while we were a majority shareholder, we were truly his partner. And I can't think of a better way to sort of embody that belief than in how we behaved in that moment. The rest is history, as they say, in that the company continued to grow after EQT came on. And you know, as I like to say, great things happen to great businesses where investors behave like they'll own them forever. And I think that's what Danaher and, frankly, for the record, many others saw in Aldevron, was a business that was poised for success and, you know, didn't need a next home. But when Danaher came along and several others were interested too, the value of the business was driven to heights that I don't think any of us could have imagined. And to date, across 550 investments, Aldevron is the second highest returning portfolio company in TA's history. And that's something that Michael and Tom and team should take a tremendous amount of pride in. So what I mentioned opened up actually did. Here's a picture of the facility. It's incredible. It is online and operational as of this year, and it is once again breaking the company's own record, the largest GMP facility for plasmid DNA, proteins, mRNA manufacturing at scale, 189,000 square feet. And it's built in an ingenious way via modular suite configuration, whereby the company can actually adapt to demand from clients in a fairly real-time way in order to make sure that it's delivering product as efficiently as possible. And I'd like to think that that sort of philosophy around not just saying yes to every client at every quality grade, at every size order, but rather understanding how to optimize one's manufacturing approach to meet client requests in an efficient way is a little bit of discipline that I think TA tried to instill as a partner. So today, the company is obviously a division of Danaher, as Tom's slide pointed out. It's a global market leader in the manufacturing of plasmid DNA, RNA, and proteins. And it continues to be really an empowering force of raw material behind the efforts of biopharma clients all over the world. The track record for safety and quality is exceptional at the company, and they now have a capability at the 14-acre Fargo campus, which is actually extended beyond that parcel of land that I showed you in the last slide, to manufacture over $1 billion in biologics, which is just a staggering amount. One of my favorite repeated memories of Aldevron was every time there was a groundbreaking, maybe this is just North Dakota, but both senators, the state representative, the governor of North Dakota all showed up and wanted to celebrate the success of the company. And when we saw these new facilities go up and we saw the tens of millions of dollars that we invested in them, you know, clients who would come from San Diego, Boston, Research Triangle Park would say, "Guys, this is unbelievable. I mean, this must have cost you $400 million to build." And we would sort of chuckle and I'd say, you're not doing your Fargo exchange rate math correctly. And you know, that was one of the things that we took a tremendous amount of pride in, because the cost of those facilities, and there was not a corner cut, believe me, was a fraction of what those people had estimated. And I think the pride that the company had in being Fargo and Madison domiciled was palpable. And one of the beauties of being, you know, part of the Danaher family is that, as I like to say, you know, even the domain name Aldevron.com hasn't changed, right? And I was in Tom's offices in Madison yesterday, and the colors and the feel of the place is very much Aldevron. I'd like to think that Danaher and the Danaher business system, many of you may have heard about, are helpful and synergistic to the company, but they are by no means overshadowing the history and the integrity of the brand, which remains today. And that's something I take a tremendous amount of pride in, and I think TA does as an institution, because of how integral where the foundation of the company came from, being in Fargo and Madison. We now serve over 5,000 clients, and the beauty of Aldevron is that when a client is won at an early stage, meaning, let's say, 5 people in a lab that have just started a biotech, all the way up to the behemoths of the world, you know, Novartis, Pfizer, et cetera, Sarepta, the ability to retain those clients across the continuum of clinical trial development and quality grades is something unique to Aldevron. You know, many of Aldevron's competitors say, we don't need to serve that 5-person company. Let someone else do that. We'll pick up, you know, once they have a real molecule, once they're in clinical trials. And Michael was very early on in seeing that that was short-sighted, and that to become a master of science at the earliest stages of development meant that one would have the credibility to serve clients across a continuum. So we, the top right of the slide captures, again, the story of the key milestones in terms of investments. But ultimately, again, beyond our wildest expectations, Aldevron was acquired by Danaher in June of last year for about $10 billion. And I'm told that that is actually, by the governor, so it's a credible source, that is actually the largest transaction in North Dakota state history, which is very cool. And you know, during TA's fortunate partnership with Aldevron, the company grew revenue. This says 4x. It was actually, I think, 8x if you include 2022. And developed several multi-year agreements that actually extended our ability to have forward-looking visibility into revenues, which was a huge assist in terms of being able to do capital planning and investment in the business. Constructed the largest facilities in the world 2 times over for plasmid DNA manufacturing, and continues to grow its employee count. Again, this is a huge point of pride that Aldevron's nearly tripled, probably latest stat is more than tripled its employee count since 2018. So we are, as an institution at TA, incredibly proud to have been involved in a small way with this company. It's been by far the highlight of my career as an investor many times over, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share the story with you today. Thank you very much. I would love to take some questions if there are any in the audience. Please feel free, whether it's about investing, Aldevron specifically, I'll try to answer those. Anything that are on people's minds would be great. Yes?
So I'm very curious why you sold a stake to EQT or ETQ or whoever they are.
EQT, yeah. So it was a difficult decision. One of the realities of the growth that Aldevron had experienced since the 2017 investment was that it was exponential. And that meant that an enormous amount of value had been created in a short period of time. And as an investor, when that occurs, which is wonderful and fortunate, you have to look at both the upside and the downside from there. And we had already exceeded our 5-year projections in 2 years in terms of what we underwrote the investment to. And we said, you know, is it possible to both recognize and monetize some of our investment while at the same time retaining exposure to the upside of what we know the company has before it? And EQT's unique approach allowed us to kind of have our cake and eat it too. If we sold the company to a strategic buyer like a Danaher at that point, it would have been unfortunate, and then I think we would have left billions of dollars of value on the table to accrue to the ultimate strategic buyer. In the case of EQT, we were able to basically roll over a substantial portion of our ownership. In fact, the value of the rollover stake that we did not sell in that transaction was the largest single position in that fund, TA12, across all of TA's portfolio. So that's how committed we were to the opportunity for that to continue to grow. And frankly, we're, obviously thrilled we did. So we viewed it as the best of both worlds. Anyone else? Yes?
When you're investing in similar markets and you have maybe competitors and you want to invest in both, do you ever come across that? How do you deal with that?
Very good question. So I'll just repeat it. If we invest in similar or adjacent markets and we have the opportunity to invest in two companies that may compete with each other, I think is the implication, how do we deal with that? Excellent question. So the overarching philosophy, because we do as a large firm encounter this more and more these days, it's something that's very top of mind from a strategy perspective amongst the partnership. The very bright line is to simply say that if a win for company A comes at company B's expense, in that they were both competing for that sale, let's say, that's a bright line that we won't cross. But if they compete in an adjacent way, and at some point, let's say they both are successful in adjacent markets without competing directly with each other, that's a bright line that is okay being on both sides of. And in some ways, we've actually had a couple examples where independent investments by TA have been made, and then eventually those companies actually make more sense together, right? And we sort of cross that line and merge them. Rare, sort of a corner case, but it does happen. But we've had very difficult decisions with fairly heated debates when the bright line discussion comes up and we say, we don't want to show up at the next client pitch and know that the next company to come in the room to win that business is this other investment we have, because that puts us in a terrible position, even if the teams at TA are totally different. Yeah. Yes?
How do we bring more partners like TA to the Midwest?
Love that question. It was, how do we bring more partners like TA to the Midwest? I am on a plane anytime there's a growth company in an interesting area for TA. I should mention, just for the benefit of my partners, that we also invest in technology, business services, financial services, consumer, et cetera. If there's one thing that I don't worry about, it's that we have a national coverage model that has an interest as much in investing in Fargo, North Dakota as it does in the coast. And I think there's a belief system that innovation happens everywhere. And there's absolutely no discounting the entrepreneurial drive and spirit of a Madison, of a Milwaukee, of a Fargo, of a Minneapolis versus coast. And in fact, I think if you looked at our portfolio of investments across sectors, you'd find a pretty nicely kind of speckled map of the US and the world. If the question is around visibility of your companies, the one way that we pick up, leads, if you will, in our sales funnel that I showed you is actually by way of simple press and conference attendance. I don't think I told this part of the story, but an associate that worked with me identified an article in the Fargo Business Journal, of all publications, that suggested that the company was hiring 50 employees. Brought that article to me and said, I haven't been able to get into this company. When I've called Michael, maybe you can try. But when you hire 50 employees in Fargo, no less, turns out that's an indication of growth, and that's what caused us to call Michael in the first place, and we were on a plane to Fargo as soon as he allowed us. So that type of visibility really helps, because we're constantly scouring the earth, including the Midwest, for signs of growth. And so being public about pronouncements of hiring, facility expansion, acquisitions, what have you, is a good way to create visibility for folks like us. I hope that helps to answer your question. Yes?
I'm curious how you evaluate, or if you evaluate the ecosystem of a growth company
to support that growth towards the success. Now Devron was able, you mentioned, to hire 50 employees out of Fargo. And so I'm just curious in the theme of this summit, how does TA evaluate whether or not the ecosystem can support growth?
Yeah, the question is, how do we evaluate whether the ecosystem that a given company sits in can support growth that meets our return criteria? So there are several ways to do that. Some of them are internal to TA and are, delivered by our own resources, including myself, and part of it is external. So we have several thought partners externally that are PhD level scientists and academics in their respective fields that will take a view on, let's say, what is the opportunity for cell and gene therapy, right? And at the time we made the investment in Aldevron, which is 2017, there were actually 0. And I remember the number 0 because my investment committee told it to me many, many times. 0 approved cell and gene therapy products on the market. And we exhausted ourselves making reference calls to venture capital investors, early stage biotech companies, mid stage biopharma companies saying, we know that there are 1,000 molecules in the pipeline, but how are we so sure that any of these are actually going to work? There's 0 on the market, right? And through, must have been 50 or 60 phone calls that we conducted and a third-party market study that was trying to validate that this is truly the next wave of medicine writ large. We placed a probability-weighted bet that several of those molecules would get through to approval, and sure enough, that's what happened. Part of the point here is that that's an incredibly bespoke analysis to every company. But the other side of that was that we said, if the base case approval rate is true, meaning taking small molecule FDA approval data and applying it to cell and gene therapy, the market, I'm going from memory, was expected to grow 50% a year, which in the US is just an incredible market growth rate that if you can simply, as we say, hold serve in a market growing 50%, you're gonna have a great performer on your hands. But then we said, even if we take the most draconian assumption possible, which is to say that we freeze the pipeline of molecules today and not a single new one enters phase 1 clinical trials, and the probabilities flow out of the existing molecules in the pipeline to yield approved products, what does the market growth rate look like in that scenario? And it was actually 15%. We said, as a downside scenario in terms of market growth, that's pretty darn good, and that helps give us conviction as well. That type of analysis applied to any particular market is kind of what we do, but it is pretty darn specific to the given end market. I think you had a question. Okay. Oh, okay, one more. One more, Lisa says. Anyone? Oh, yes, yeah.
So if a company is not necessarily the right criteria in terms of being growth oriented, but there is a technology base, a small customer base, you had some information about your company's acquiring. How would a company reach out to you or your associates to kind of talk about those customers?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So the question was, if a company doesn't meet our platform investment growth criteria, but it could be a fit for acquisition for one of our existing platforms, how do we get in touch? Well, certainly Ethan@ta.com is an easy email address to know, and I promise to be responsive and attribute it to the right space. But the reality is, ta.com, we're fortunate to be around a long time, so we got a good domain name, I guess, is also a good place to go to say, you can sort by, let's say, sector, subsector, et cetera, to say, is there a company in our portfolio that might be a fit from your vantage point as an operator? And in that case, the board members for that particular company are actually listed on the website in partnership with it. But honestly, if you send me an email, I'm happy to evaluate it and get you to the right people if it's not me that would be responding.
Everyone,
Thank you.